I want to ask you, what is something unexpected that came out of this year-long experience of talking with these scientists from around the world? What is something unexpected that you found to come out of this?
You mean like things that
you weren't expecting to like happen, or that just happened as a consequence of you talking with these people? And
quite a few unexpected things. I mean, I think every interview I did has surprising revelations. When I prep for an interview, I know some things about my interviewee. I mean, I do a lot of research and I prepare my questions specifically for that interviewee. But then along the way, they reveal a lot of things about their life, and that always becomes interesting, right? But one of the things that really surprised me along the way is not about the interviews themselves, but about people's reactions to the entire project, including my own interviewees. As I'm sure you have experienced, you send out invites, and some of them say yes, some of them you never hear back, and others are like, I'm not sure, whatever, right? And so, your mileage may vary in terms of what fraction of people you have saying yes. In my experience, the thing that surprised me the most is that the folks who said yes said a very enthusiastic yes. They said, yes, I will appear on your podcast. Not only that, I will also, your project is great. We need more of this. And I'm going to amplify this and publicize it even more. Not just, my episode, but everyone else's episode. A few of the interviewees, when I invited them, they're like, I know your podcast. I've been listening to it already for 6 months. So I was waiting kind of for your invite. That surprised me a lot. So that was very, 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 very surprising to me. I did not expect that. Partly also I did not expect that because of the second surprising aspect, which is, even though podcasting is a very technical thing, whether it's podcasting or talk shows or whatever on YouTube, one of the things I discovered very quickly after I started releasing episodes is that computer scientists, who at least the ones who are on social media, don't listen to podcasts all that much. I mean, they listen, but only select podcasts. There's a lot of them who don't even know what podcasts are. I'm actually ashamed to say that, but it's true. It's true of like a lot of computer scientists. Like some of them are well-established computer scientists. They're like, podcast? Is that like on YouTube? I'm like, no, it has only audio. So part of what I was doing with social media was also kind of like just bringing people into the podcast listening world. Some of them, yes, some of them had been listening to podcasts for years. Those who had been. But others were like, I don't know what a podcast is. My life is too busy. So that was the other surprising thing, right? So, but I think over time, we got more listeners in who were listening, who had never listened to a podcast before, including some of my own friends, right? And a lot of people, because of whatever, a lot of people think that podcasts or talk shows like yours are, you have to pay some money or something to listen to them or watch them. It's like, no, it's all free. We are doing this on a volunteer basis, right? And some people can't believe that, things can be free. People are like, oh, there's no free lunch in this world. But sometimes there is, we do it for a reason, right? The two of you and I, we do our own shows for a particular reason. We have our own motivations. So I think that was the other surprising thing about the group of listeners, I think, that surprised me. That I didn't expect that. But apart from that, every story is just very, very unique. Every story is very, very different. I spoke with people who lived through the communist years in communist countries, grew up in Romania, Moldova. They described communist experiences. They described the communist government keeping folders about their family. They described not being able to have enough money to buy eggs. And they describe their parents creating a game where you fish behind the sofa looking for the coins so that you can go buy bread. Some of them actually lived through that, and now they're professors here and well-known entrepreneurs here. I've talked with some people like that. There are episodes like that. Then there are episodes of people who grew up in very repressive regimes, not communist, but other repressive regimes in the Middle East. And in spite of that, they founded companies in those Middle Eastern companies, in Middle Eastern countries. And then they moved to North America, and then they founded another company over here, right? So they're like serial entrepreneurs, but in like different countries, very different challenges in the different countries. I spoke with people who suffered illnesses when they were small. One of my guests had tuberculosis when he was like in early kindergarten, early primary school, and he missed like 2 years of school. And he said, in those 2 years, I essentially read the atlas, and that's why I'm a geography buff now, right? And another one of my guests survived breast cancer, and that changed what she does in research. She had one of the best answers. So I asked this question to everyone: how do you handle imposter syndrome? How do you handle failures? Imposter syndrome is where you feel like you don't belong where you are. If you're a computer scientist, you're like, I'm a fake. Everyone around me is much better than me. I don't really belong here, right? So I asked this question on all of my interviews. And I think this guest who was a cancer survivor had one of the best answers. And her answer was, it doesn't matter. I'm a vehicle to achieve the goal of this research. If it was someone else in my place, they would just do the necessary thing to continue being the vehicle for this research. So it doesn't matter whether I'm good or bad. I'm just going to continue being a vehicle for this research. So actually, she does research now on oncology and on medical informatics. So her recovery from cancer actually changed her experience. So there's a lot of very diverse stories like this in the podcast. Stuff that doesn't get talked about, right? If you go to a conference, you talk with someone, technically, they're not going to tell you about, all their deep stories, right? That's the other thing that surprised me, going back to your earlier question, that the folks who came on the podcast, when I asked them questions, it's not like I asked them probing questions. I don't ask them, did you ever suffer a disease? I don't ask them that. I just ask them very basic questions like, what was it like, growing up? They actually revealed a lot more of themselves than I thought they would. And partly because I think they felt comfortable in a safe space, but also partly because they felt that these experiences they had would actually inform others in the broader community, not just computer scientists and students who are growing up to be computer scientists, but like everyone else, really, right? Because after all, we're all human beings at the end of the day, right? So that's the other part that surprised me, that I don't think I had a single episode where I started the episode and then partway through the episode, I'm like, this person is setting up a wall between them and me. That never happened. I expected that to actually happen. It never did. There was never a wall, ever. It was always like they were revealing a lot more than I could process, right? So that was kind of surprising to me. It partly is also correlated with the fact that the folks who agreed to come on the podcast were already very enthusiastic about the entire project anyway. They said, we should be talking more about immigrants and computer science and immigrants in general in this country, right? Because immigrants do contribute a lot to the economy of the country, and there's a lot of studies. Actually, I spoke with a few. I don't do research on the social science and economy side, but I did speak with a few economists in our campus who do research on that. So there are research works that investigate, for instance, why is it that Asians, for instance, gravitate more towards math and science, right? There's no silver bullet answer to that question. Why is it that immigrant Asians migrate more towards math and science? Is the performance of boys and girls in math and science really all that different, right? There's actually studies that process data from tests across the world, and these are actually published in well-known economics journals. So I spoke with a few of them, and the questions that I was asking them, they're like, we don't have answers to that. We have answers to other things, but not to this. Things like, why are there fewer women in computing? There's no data answers to that, right? There's a lot of theories, but there's no answers to that. So that was part of the prep for the podcast as well. But it's a well-studied but a less understood area, and anecdotal stories and real experiences, I think, add more to that area. That's kind of what the podcast